The room your character is in, obviously is very dark and tight and claustrophobic. And I was wondering, when you shot these scenes, how many people were actually with you in that room while filming?
Um, well, we shot in two different locations. We shot the first 2 weeks in an actual house where you see like the rest of the story play out. And in that closet, it was a practical closet that they had opened up the back room, um, so that other people, like the camera and everything, could get in there. But then for the final 2 weeks, they built out in a sound stage. They built like a false closet for us to shoot in.
Yeah.
So I was the only one that was in that closet, but they would just remove certain walls or remove whatever part they needed to like get the shot. But um, for the most part, I mean, especially in the final 2 weeks, it was just me in the closet alone doing scenes. Like I didn't even have the little girl that I was shooting with was not there. It was like no,
Yeah.
there was nothing else. Was like I was just having to really use my imagination to take the scene where it needed to go.
All right. Wow.
Yeah.
And what about, because obviously throughout the most scenes in the movie, we get to see your character, Jessica, trying to figure out a way out of the room. And I was
Mhm.
wondering if that did add some extra pressure on you, because, it really was up to you in throughout so many scenes to bring them alive through your acting and emotions.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a very emotionally challenging movie. Especially like I was saying, because like so much of it depended on me creating these imaginary circumstances. Because after we left the house and we were just shooting, like we didn't have like the practical house anymore, so
Yeah.
most of the other actors were no longer there, and I was just having to like, if I hear someone going up the stairs or if I hear somebody outside, I'm just like imagining what it would be like. So just really, I think was a wonderful challenge as an actor. But then at the same time, like it was amazing getting to work with Vincent Gallo, and like the scenes where I actually get to like interact with someone else then felt like even
Yeah.
more of a gift, because then like being able to actually play with someone and have those interactions elevates my performance, I think. So yeah, it was definitely very interesting to be able to experience such a stark contrast.
All right. And Rainey, if you don't mind, I would like to discuss a few deeper going topics with you that are discussed in the movie because they're there and they kind of inspired questions.
Sure.
For example, like very early on in the movie, we realized that sometimes like hard decisions are absolutely necessary in order to move on in life. For example, Jessica made a decision to break up with Rob
Mhm.
in order to get clean and to move on in life. And she must have realized that it's not possible to get clean with Rob because he never really showed real intentions about getting clean himself. And so she knew that she had to do it herself. And he kind of feels betrayed a little bit because he doesn't, he makes it clear that he doesn't really like it. And, but again, sometimes hard decisions are necessary, even if people around you don't necessarily like that. And I was wondering if that is something you can relate to, if you ever actually had to make like a hard but necessary decision in your life or career in order to move on in a way.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think we all have had to make difficult decisions like that, and like you were saying with Jessica, for example, it's like such an obviously toxic relationship, and um, I think that like something that I was really interested by in the story is like I don't know if she hadn't gone through this difficult experience that she
Mhm.
did, if she would have actually been able to stay clean, and it was like this growing experience for her. But I guess like on a personal level, yeah, I mean, I make difficult decisions all the time. I like I I graduated early from high school and moved to New York when I was really young, lived there by myself, and then moved out to LA by myself. So I think I've been I've never really been afraid to like make big changes in my life in order to pursue my career, try to like improve or I guess, go chase my dreams or whatever.
Yeah, right, right. And what about, because obviously your character says that she doesn't really have a clue how to be a good mother, because obviously her relationship to her own mother wasn't the best one, and she even says she hates her. And obviously she would have received like love, she would have been able to give that back to her own kids. And obviously she says she never learned how to be a good mom. And obviously when we are kids, what we learn as children can be so important in our lives as adults. And I was wondering if you do remember like something specific that you learned at a very young age that has become something very important in your life as an adult artist.
Well, I think the most important thing that I learned as a child has just been through the love that I give and receive with my siblings. My brother and my sister are my best friends, my favorite people in the world. And I think like knowing that I can always depend on them, and we're so open with each other and we're so connected, and having that support system, I think has allowed me to experience life in the way that I have. And yeah, I mean, I think like, of course, we all, as what the love that we're given or not given as children is so reflective and indicative of the way that we live the rest of our lives. But I definitely am so thankful for my brother and my sister, and to have that support. And I know that no matter what happens, I can always count on them, you know.
Oh, wow. Nice, nice.
Yeah.
And obviously the fact that Jessica has become clean doesn't mean that she never experiences like a weak moment where she possibly could have a relapse. In fact, we even see in the movie a moment where she has a weak moment, and the question is, can she resist a bad decision or not? Because going back to her addiction would be a bad decision. And obviously we all may have like a weak moment in our lives for whatever reason. And when we have that, we may have the tendency to make bad decisions ourselves. And I was wondering, whenever you had like a weak moment for whatever reason in your life or in your career, because maybe things didn't exactly go the way you imagined, how did you make sure that you resist bad decisions in a weak moment?
I mean, I think that's something that I am working on all the time. And I my tendency for the majority of my life, whenever I'm going through something, has been to turn inwards, and I get embarrassed, and I just don't want to rely on anybody else. But I'm learning to try to be less afraid to ask for help when I need it, and to especially like, you know, now I can call my sister with anything all the time. She's always there for me. But
Oh, wow.
but even like my best friends and my sister, sorry, my cat's like, but like even for a long time, it was challenging for me to even reach out to the closest people in my life when something was going on. But I think I'm in therapy. I think everybody should be in therapy. And like, that's helpful. But yeah, I mean, I think being unafraid to ask for help and ask for advice when you feel like you need it, and rely on your people that whatever your support group is immensely helpful.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then, oh, what do we have there? Cat power, I love
Yeah,
it so
exactly.
much. And I was wondering, because there's also a part of Jessica and Rob, there's also another character who's very interesting. It's Sammy. And at first, when you see him, you feel that he's going to be like the real threat and everything, you know. And he says something interesting. He goes like, people who are hoping are desperate. And I was wondering, what would you say is your definition of the form of hope that is represented in the movie in that moment?
Well, I mean, I don't know if we should necessarily be taking Sammy's advice. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of ways to look at to look at that idea, and like, sure, you could you could look at hope as being a form of desperation, but that's so pessimistic. I think like
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Um, um, I think also like, hope is what drives us to do anything and try to achieve anything. If you don't think you can, they wouldn't try.
Yeah.
And I think hope can be wonderful.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
For
um, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the fascinating thing is that at first I thought that Sammy would like be like a straight up bad guy, but there was like one tiny moment where I kind of tried to see him with different eyes. It's like when he says that um, he went back into his addiction because he wanted to escape his own reality, and I was like, how terrible does your life have to be if like going back to your addiction is like the only way that brings you some peace in a way.
Totally. I mean, I think that's one of the wonderful things about the story is that like even the villain is not a one-dimensional character, and there's moments where you even are able to feel empathetic for this like monstrous human. But of course, people, the worst people only act that way because of the way they were treated, and it's generational trauma. So yeah, I think it's wonderful that even for a moment you're able to empathize with like the villain. And as you said, yeah, like relying on terrible habits like drug use as a way, as a form of escape is unfortunately tremendously common. Like, in and just because, like I said, like everybody should go to therapy.
Right. And Rainey, my last question to you would be like, because I absolutely love, this like this tiny little traditional aspect, with the apple butter.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of reminded me of when you hear like at the end you hear like that the grandmother says not just to cut away like the brown sides of it and to eat the rest. That was like I remembered my own grandma telling me that whenever I saw like an apple with just a tiny little brown piece on there, I was like, oh, I'm not gonna eat that. And my granny was like, just cut it off and the rest will be delicious. However, I was wondering if you have like a similar traditional thing, in your family, if there is like a specific recipe that kind of survived the generations.
Well, we definitely have a very similar mentality of like not wanting to waste things. I grew up in
Yeah.
in Montana when I was a kid, so we grew a lot of our own food. And I live now in California, and I have like a garden and a bunch of fruit in my backyard. So, um, the that mentality definitely resonates with me, just because I know how difficult it could be to grow food.
Yeah.
But actually, like very similarly, I have an apple tree in my backyard, and my dad was staying with me
Oh,
for a couple months over the summer, and we collected a bunch of the apples and like we didn't make apple butter, but made a couple apple pies from scratch. So that was really fun. My dad's a great cook. So I don't know if that's like a family recipe necessarily, but it was a family experience.
yeah, that
Yeah.
counts. That counts.
Yeah.
Awesome. Seriously, Rainey, I want to thank you so much for sharing your time with us today, for talking to us about your movie and about the topics in it. And obviously, you have a wonderful day and a happy Halloween.
Oh yeah, thank you. You too. So good talking
And
to you.